Other than the relief bill that Biden's trying to pass, he's working on another priority. But looking beyond the $1.9 trillion COVID relief bill, the President Joe Biden and lawmakers are laying the groundwork for another top legislative priority: a long-sought boost to the nation's roads, bridges, and other infrastructure that could run into Republican resistance, up to a hefty price tag. Biden and his team have begun discussions on the possible outlines of an infrastructure package, with members of Congress particularly mindful that Texas's recent struggles with the power outages and water shortages after a brutal winter storm they present an opportunity for agreement on sustained spending on infrastructure. Republicans say that if the White House approach on the COVID relief bill, which passed the House Saturday on a near-party line vote and now heads to the Senate, is a sign of things to come for Biden's plan on infrastructure and other initiatives, and it could be a difficult road ahead in Congress. A White House proposal could come out in March, or like late March anyway. Now is the time to be aggressive," said Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg, a former South Bend, Indiana mayor who knows the potholes around that area. Yeah, Indiana's full of potholes. At a conference with the state and local highway officials Thursday, he referred to the often promised, never achieved mega initiative on roads, bridges, and the like from the Trump administration. "I know you're among those who are working and waiting almost patiently, or maybe patiently for the or maybe impatiently for the moment when the infrastructure week will no longer be a kind of Groundhog's Day promise, but actually be something that delivers the general investments," he said. But much of America's infrastructure, like the roads, bridges, public drinking and water systems, dams, airports, mass transit systems, and more, is in need of major restoration after years of underfunding, according to the American Society of Civil Engineers in its 2017 infrastructure report card. It gave the national infrastructure an overall grade of a D. Both chambers of Congress will use as starting points their unsuccessful efforts to get infrastructure bills through the last session. Democrats had passed a $1.5 trillion package in the White House last year, but it went nowhere with the Trump administration and the Republican-led Senate. A Senate panel approved narrower bipartisan legislation in 2019, and it focused on reauthorizing federal transportation programs that, too, flamed out as the U.S. turned its focus to elections and COVID-19. Biden has talked bigger numbers, and some Democrats are now urging him to bypass Republicans in the closely divided Congress to address a broader range of priorities that are urged by the interest groups. During the presidential campaign, Biden pledged to deploy $2 trillion on infrastructure and earn clean energy, but the White House has not rolled out an even higher price tag. Pointing to the storm in Texas is a wake-up call for the need to improve energy systems and other infrastructure. Gina McCarthy, Biden's national climate advisor, had told the Associated Press that Biden's plan will specifically aim at green and other initiatives that promote job creation. She cited as an example federal investments to boost workers that have been left behind by the closed coal mines or power plants, as well as communities that are located near polluting refineries and other hazards. He's been a long fan of investing in infrastructure, long outdated, long overdue, and I should say the White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki had said Thursday, but he also wants to do more on caregiving and help in our manufacturing sector and do more to strengthen access to affordable health care. So the size, the package, the components of it, the order, that has not yet been determined. But Senator Bernie Sanders, who's an independent from Vermont, who's a chairman of the Senate Budget Committee, had recently told the White House that he's ready to use the budget maneuver known as reconciliation to pass a broad economic recovery package with only Democratic votes, and that drew stern warnings from the Republicans, who have already closed ranks against Democrats on the COVID-19 relief bill. And they made a conscious decision to not include us, said Senator Bill Cassidy, who's a Republican from Louisiana, on Sunday, calling the White House's assertion that the views of Republicans were taken into account with the COVID bill a joke. Cassidy, who's one of 10 centrist Republicans who have met with Biden in early February about getting bipartisan support on that bill, said Biden so far has been about rhetoric when it comes to his pledge of seeking unity and bipartisanship. He called it worrisome for other legislative initiatives. The Republicans remain willing and are working on issues that require bipartisan cooperation. Yeah, bullshit. West Virginia Senator Shelley Moore Capito, who's a Republican who will be helping to craft legislation on the Senate side, said that there is bipartisan support for ambitious steps in infrastructure, but that should not extend to a multi-trillion-dollar package that is stocked full with other ideologically driven, one-size-fits-all policies that tie the hands of our states and our communities. The ranking member on the Senate Environmental and Public Works Committee said, Representative Peter DeFazio, who's the chairman of the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, had told the Associated Press that he foresees a comprehensive House package that will go beyond roads, bridges, and public transit. He also expects it to have money for water systems, broadband, and the power grid, addressing a weak infrastructure laid bare after the crippling blackouts in Texas. He's not ready to talk overall cost yet, but DeFazio, who's a Democrat from Oregon, had said he would go up to the Biden administration and the House Ways and Means Committee to figure out how to pay for this. DeFazio said that the General Motors recently announced a goal of going largely electric by 2035 and demonstrates the need for massive spending on charging stations across the country. Biden campaigned on a plan to install 500,000 charging stations by the end of 2030. I'm totally willing to work with Republicans if they're willing to recognize the climate change, DeFazio said, or if they don't want to recognize climate change, they can just recognize that electric semis and the electric vehicles are a flood on the horizon, and we've got to get ahead of it. The Governor Gretchen Whitmer, who's a Democrat from Michigan, had expressed a similar sentiment, urging strong action on carbon emissions and the vehicle charging stations to help achieve a full transition to electric. She also wants states to have more federal grants for infrastructure repairs after natural disasters and extreme weather. All the Senate hearing where she spoke, like the Republican Governor Larry Hogan of Maryland, said that there's bipartisan support among governors for relieving congestion, cutting the red tape, leveraging private sector investments, and ensuring projects can better withstand cyber attacks and natural disasters. The Democratic Senator Tom Harper of Delaware and the new chairman of the Senate Environment and Public Works Committee said his goal is for his committee to pass an infrastructure bill by Memorial Day. In the House, Representative Sam Graves, the top Republican on the transport panel, said that Republicans would be open to a larger package as long as it didn't greatly add to the national debt, but many lawmakers oppose an increasing in the federal gas tax, one way to help pay for the spending, while groups such as the Chamber of Commerce argue against increasing taxes on companies during a pandemic. The White House aide, Cedric Richmond, a former congressman from Louisiana, had told the state transportation officials that the president intends for most of the spending to be paid for and not added to the debt. In part, this would be by reversing some of the Trump administration's tax cuts. Ed Mortimer, who's a vice president at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, said that removing items in last year's infrastructure bill for renovating schools and low-income housing could lower the price tag because the COVID relief bill had measure that's passed by the House already has hundreds of billions of dollars for those purposes. Affordable housing, school construction, very meritorious, but we're not sure that that's the key focus that's going to get a bill signed into law, Mortimer said. Yeah.